Hi. How's everybody doing? Looks like Zuluana is here, and C. Finelli, and Michelle L. Hello, hello. And someone else is here. Maybe it was me. I have no idea. Anyway, hello to everyone. So, I don't really know why you would get notifications or why you would not. I don't know anything about anything. So, I don't know. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. I really have no idea. I don't get notified from anyone when they go live. So the only way that I do is if I happen to be on YouTube and then I'm like, oh look, this person is live. So that's how I get notified. So I don't really know what to tell you. I'm not technology savvy in any way. So you're lucky I can live stream it all. So we are on chapters 5 and 6 of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia series. So sit back and enjoy the fire and enjoy the story. Chapter 5, back on this side of the door. Because the game of hide and seek was still going on, it took Edmund and Lucy some time to find the others. But when at last they were all together, which happened in the long room where the suit of armor was, Lucy burst out, Peter, Susan, it's all true. Edmund has seen it too. There is a country you can get to through the wardrobe. Edmund and I both got in. We met one another in there in the wood. Go on, Edmund, tell them all about it. What's all this about, Ed? Said Peter. And now we come to one of the nastiest things in this story. Up to that moment, Edmund had been feeling sick and sulky and annoyed with Lucy for being right, but he hadn't made up his mind what to do. When Peter suddenly asked him the question, he decided all at once to do the meanest and most spiteful thing he could think of. He decided to let Lucy down. Tell us, Ed, said Susan. And Edmund gave a very superior look as if he were far older than Lucy. There was really only a year's difference. And then a little snigger and said, Oh, yes, Lucy and I have been playing, pretending that all her story about a country in the wardrobe is true. Just for fun, of course. There's nothing there, really. Poor Lucy gave Edmund one look and rushed out of the room. Edmund, who was becoming a nastier person every minute, thought that he had scored a great success and went on at once to say, There she goes again. What's the matter with her? That's the worst of young kids. They always... Look here, said Peter, turning on him savagely. Shut up. You've been perfectly beastly to Lou ever since she started this nonsense about her wardrobe, and now you go playing games with her about it and setting her off again. I believe you did it simply out of spite. But it's all nonsense, said Edmund, very taken aback. Of course it's all nonsense, said Peter. That's just the point. Lou was perfectly all right when we left home, but since we've been down here, she seems to be either going queer in the head or else turning into a most frightful liar. But whichever it is, what good do you think you'll do by jeering and nagging at her one day and encouraging her the next? I thought, said Edmund, but he couldn't think of anything to say. You didn't think at all, said Peter. It's just spite. You've always liked being beastly to anyone smaller than yourself. We've seen that at school before now. Do stop it, said Susan. It won't make things any better having a row between you two. Let's go and find Lucy. It was not surprising that when they found Lucy a good deal later, everyone could see that she had been crying. Nothing they could say to her made any difference. She stuck to her story and said, I don't care what you think, and I don't care what you say. You can tell the professor, or you can write to Mother, or you can do anything you like. I know I've met a fawn in there, and I wish I'd stayed there, and you were all beasts. Beasts! It was an unpleasant evening. Lucy was miserable, and Edmund was beginning to feel that his plan wasn't working as well as he had expected. The two older ones were really beginning to think that Lucy was out of her mind. They stood in the passage talking about it in whispers long after she had gone to bed. The result was the next morning they decided that they really would go and tell the whole thing to the professor. He'll write to Father if he thinks there is really something wrong with Lou, said Peter. It's getting beyond us. So they went and knocked at the study door, and the professor said, Come in, and got up and found chairs for them and said he was quite at their disposal. Then he sat listening to them with the tips of his fingers pressed together and never interrupting till they had finished the whole story. After that, he said nothing for quite a long time. Then he cleared his throat and said the last thing either of them expected. How do you know, he asked, that your sister's story is not true? Oh, but, began Susan, and then stopped. Anyone could see from the old man's face that he was perfectly serious. Then Susan pulled herself together and said, But Edmund said they had only been pretending. That is a point, said the professor, which certainly deserves consideration. Very well, consideration. For instance, if you will excuse me for asking the question, does your experience lead you to regard your brother or your sister as the more reliable? I mean, which is more truthful? That's just the funny thing about it, sir, said Peter. Up till now, I'd have said Lucy every time. And what do you think, my dear? Said the professor, turning to Susan. Well, said Susan, in general, I'd say the same as Peter, but this couldn't be true. All this about the wood and the fawn? That is more than I know, said the professor, and a charge of lying against someone whom you have always found truthful is a very serious thing. A very serious thing indeed. We were afraid it mightn't even be lying, said Susan. We thought there might be something wrong with Lucy. Madness, you mean? Said the professor quite coolly. Oh, you can make your minds easy about that. One has only to look at her and talk to her to see that she is not mad. But then, said Susan, and stopped. She had never dreamed that a grown-up would talk like the professor and didn't know what to think. Just a little side note, in case no one knows, from the first book, there was a boy in there named Dudley, and this professor is that boy. Just FYI. Now I lost my place. Logic, said the professor half to himself. Why don't they teach logic at these schools? There are only three possibilities. Either your sister is telling lies, or she is mad, or she is telling the truth. You know she doesn't tell lies, and it is obvious that she is not mad. For the moment, then, and unless any further evidence turns up, we must assume that she is telling the truth. Susan looked at him very hard and was quite sure from the expression on his face that he was not making fun of them. But how could it be true, sir? Said Peter. Why do you say that? Asked the professor. Well, for one thing, said Peter, if it was real, why doesn't everyone find this country every time they go to the wardrobe? I mean, there was nothing there when we looked. Even Lucy didn't pretend there was. What has that to do with it? Said the professor. Well, sir, if things are real, they're there all the time. Are they? Said the professor, and Peter did not quite know what to say. But there was no time, said Susan. Lucy had had no time to have gone anywhere. Even if there was such a place, she came running after us the very moment we were out of the room. It was less than a minute, and she pretended to have been away for hours. That is the very thing that makes her story so likely to be true, said the professor. If there really is a door in this house that leads to some other world, and I should warn you that this is a very strange house, and even I know very little about it. If I say she had got into another world, I should not be surprised at all to find the other world had a separate time of its own, so that however long you stayed there, it would never take up any of our time. On the other hand, I don't think many girls of her age would invent that idea for themselves. If she had been pretending, she would have hidden for a reasonable time before coming out and telling her story. But what do you really mean, sir, said Peter, that there could be other worlds all over the place, just round the corner, like that? Nothing is more probable, said the professor, taking off his spectacles and beginning to polish them, while he muttered to himself, I wonder what they do teach them at these schools. But what are we to do? Said Susan. She felt that the conversation was beginning to get off the point. My dear young lady, said the professor, suddenly looking up with a very sharp expression at both of them. There is one plan which no one has yet suggested and which is well worth trying. What's that? Said Susan. We might all try minding our own business, said he, and that was the end of the conversation. After this, things were a good deal better for Lucy. Peter saw to it that Edmund stopped jeering at her, and neither she nor anyone else felt inclined to talk about the wardrobe at all. It had become a rather alarming subject, and so for a time it looked as if all the adventures were coming to an end, but that was not to be. This house of the professor's, which even he knew so little about, was so old and famous that people from all over England used to come and ask permission to see over it. It was the sort of house that is mentioned in guidebooks and even in histories, and, well, it might be, for all manner of stories were told about it, some of them even stranger than the one I am telling you now. And when parties of sightseers arrived and asked to see the house, the professor always gave them permission, and Mrs. Macready, the housekeeper, showed them round, telling them all about the pictures and the armor and the rare books in the library. Mrs. Macready was not fond of children and did not like to be interrupted when she was telling visitors all the things she knew. She had said to Susan and Peter almost on the first morning, along with a good many other instructions, And please remember you're to keep out of the way whenever I'm taking a party over the house. Just as if any of us would want to waste half the morning trailing around with a crowd of strange grown-ups, said Edmund, and the other three thought the same. That was how the adventures began, for the second time. A few mornings later, Peter and Edmund were looking at the suit of armor and wondering if they could take it to bits when the two girls rushed into the room and said, "Look out, here comes the Macready with a whole gang with her." "Sharp's a word," said Peter, and all four made off through the door at the far end of the room. But when they had got out into the green room and beyond it into the library, they suddenly heard voices ahead of them and realized that Mrs. Macready must be bringing her party of sightseers up the back stairs instead of up the front stairs as they had expected. And after that, whether it was that they lost their heads or that Mrs. Macready was trying to catch them or that some magic in the house had come to life and was chasing them into Narnia, they seemed to find themselves being followed everywhere until at last said, "Oh, bother those trippers. Here, let's get into the wardrobe room till they've passed. No one will follow us in there." But the moment they were inside, they heard voices in the passage and then someone fumbling at the door, and then they saw the handle turning. "Quick," said Peter, "there's nowhere else," and flung open the wardrobe. All four of them bundled inside it and sat there, panting in the dark. Peter held the door closed, but did not shut it, for of course he remembered, as every sensible person does, that you should never shut yourself up in a wardrobe. Chapter 6. Into the Forest. I wish the Macready would hurry up and take all these people away," said Susan presently. "I'm getting horribly cramped." "And what a filthy smell of camphor," said Edmund. "I expect the pockets of these coats are full of it," said Susan, "to keep away the moths." "There's something sticking to my back," said Peter. "And isn't it cold?" said Susan. "Now that you mention it, it is cold," said Peter. "And hang it all, it's wet, too. What's the matter with this place? I'm sitting on something wet. It's getting wetter every minute." He struggled to his feet. "Let's get out," said Edmund. "They've gone." "Oh," said Susan suddenly, and everyone asked her what was the matter. "I'm sitting against a tree," said Susan. "And look, it's getting light over there." "By Jove, you're right," said Peter. "And look, there, and there, it's trees all round, and this wet stuff is snow. Why, I do believe we've got into Lucy's wood after all." And now there was no mistaking it, and all four children stood blinking in the daylight of a winter day. Behind them were coats hanging on pegs. In front of them were snow-covered trees. Peter turned at once to Lucy. "I apologize for not believing you," he said. "I'm sorry. Will you shake hands?" "Of course," said Lucy, and did. "And now," said Susan, "what do we do next?" "Do?" said Peter. "Why, go and explore the wood, of course." "Ugh," said Susan, stamping her feet. "It's pretty cold. What about putting on some of these coats?" "They're not ours," said Peter doubtfully. "I am sure nobody would mind," said Susan. "It isn't as if we wanted to take them out of the house. We shan't take them even out of the wardrobe." "I never thought of that, Sue," said Peter. "Of course, now you put it that way, I see. No one could say you had bagged a coat as long as you leave it in the wardrobe where you found it, and I suppose this whole country is in the wardrobe." They immediately carried out Susan's very sensible plan. The coats were rather too big for them, so that they came down to their heels and looked more like royal robes than coats when they had put them on. But they all felt a good deal warmer, and each thought the others looked better in their new get-ups and more suitable to the landscape. "We can pretend we are Arctic explorers," said Lucy. This is going to be exciting enough without pretending, said Peter, as he began leading the way into the forest. There were heavy, darkish clouds overhead, and it looked as if there might be more snow before night. I say, began Edmund presently, oughtn't we to be bearing a bit more to the left? That is, if we are aiming for the lamp-post. He had forgotten for the moment that he must pretend never to have been in the wood before. The moment the words were out of his mouth, he realized that he had given himself away. Everyone stopped and everyone stared at him. Peter whistled. So you really were here, he said. That time Lou said she'd met you in here, you made out she was telling lies. There was a dead silence. Well, of all the poisonous little beasts, said Peter, and shrugged his shoulders and said no more. There seemed indeed no more to say. And presently the four resumed their journey, but Edmund was saying to himself, I'll pay you all for this, you pack of stuck-up, self-satisfied prigs. Where are we going, anyway? Said Susan, chiefly for the sake of changing the subject. I think Lou ought to be the leader, said Peter. Goodness knows she deserves it. Where will you take us, Lou? What about going to see Mr. Tumnus? Said Lucy. He's the nice fawn I told you about. Everyone agreed to this, and off they went, walking briskly and stamping their feet. Lucy proved a good leader. At first she wondered whether she would be able to find the way, but she recognized an odd-looking tree on one place and a stump in another and brought them to where the ground became uneven and into the little valley and at last to the very door of Mr. Tumnus's cave. But there, a terrible surprise awaited them. The door had been wrenched off its hinges and broken to bits. Inside, the cave was dark and cold and had the damp feel and smell of a place that had not been lived in for several days. Snow had drifted in from the doorway and was heaped on the floor, mixed with something black, which turned out to be the charred sticks and ashes from the fire. Someone had apparently flung it about the room and then stamped it out. The crockery lay smashed on the floor, and the picture of the fawn's father had been slashed into shreds with a knife. This is a pretty good washout, said Edmund. Not much good coming here. What is this? Said Peter, stooping down. He had just noticed a piece of paper which had been nailed through the carpet to the floor. Is there anything written on it? Asked Susan. Yes, I think there is, answered Peter, but I can't read it in this light. Let's get out into the open air. They all went out into the daylight and crowded round Peter as he read out the following words. The former occupant of these premises, the fawn Tumnus, is under arrest and awaiting his trial on a charge of high treason against Her Imperial Majesty Jadis, Queen of Narnia, Chatelaine of Cair Paravel, Empress of the Lone Islands, etc. Also of comforting her said Majesty's enemies, harboring spies, and of fraternizing with humans. Signed, Malgrim, Captain of the Secret Police. Long live the Queen. The children stared at each other. I don't know that I'm going to like this place after all, said Susan. Who is this Queen, Lou? Said Peter. Do you know anything about her? She isn't a real queen at all, answered Lucy. She's a horrible witch, the White Witch. Everyone, all the wood people hate her. She has made an enchantment over the whole country so that it is always winter here and never Christmas. I wonder if there's any point in going on, said Susan. I mean, it doesn't seem particularly safe here, and it looks as if it won't be much fun either. And it's getting colder every minute, and we've brought nothing to eat. What about just going home? Oh, but we can't, said Lucy suddenly. Don't you see? We can't just go home. Not after this. It is all on my account that the poor fawn has got into this trouble. He hid me from the witch and showed me the way back. That's what it means by comforting the queen's enemies and fraternizing with humans. We simply must try to rescue him. A lot we could do, said Edmund, when we haven't got anything to eat. Shut up, you, said Peter, who was still very angry with Edmund. What do you think, Susan? I've a horrid feeling that Lou is right, said Susan. I don't want to go a step further, and I wish we'd never come, but I think we must try to do something for Mr. whatever his name is. I mean, the fawn. That's what I feel too, said Peter. I'm worried about having no food with us. I'd vote for going back and getting something from the larder, only there doesn't seem to be any certainty of getting into this country again once you've got out of it. I think we'll have to go on. So do I, said both girls. If only we knew where the poor chap was imprisoned, said Peter. They were all still wondering what to do next when Lucy said, Look, there's a robin with such a red breast. It's the first bird I've seen here. I say, I wonder, can birds talk in Narnia? It almost looks as if it wanted to say something to us. Then she turned to the robin and said, Please, can you tell us where Tumnus the fawn has been taken to? And as she said this, she took a step toward the bird. It at once flew away, but only as far as to the next tree. There it perched and looked at them very hard, as if it understood all they had been saying. Almost without noticing that they had done so, the four children went a step or two nearer to it. At this, the robin flew away again to the next tree, and once more looked at them very hard. You couldn't have found a robin with a redder chest or a brighter eye. Do you know, said Lucy, I really believe he means us to follow him. I've an idea he does, said Susan. What do you think, Peter? Well, we might as well try it, answered Peter. The robin appeared to understand the matter thoroughly. It kept going from tree to tree, always a few yards ahead of them, but always so near that they could easily follow it. In this way, it led them on slightly downhill. Wherever the robin alighted, a little shower of snow would fall off the branch. Presently the clouds parted overhead, and the winter sun came out, and the snow all round them grew dazzlingly bright. They had been traveling in this way for about half an hour with the two girls in front when Edmund said to Peter, If you're not still too high and mighty to talk to me, I've something to say which you'd better listen to. What is it? Asked Peter. Hush, not so loud, said Edmund. There's no good frightening the girls, but have you realized what we're doing? What? Said Peter, lowering his voice to a whisper. We're following a guide we know nothing about. How do we know which side that bird is on? Why shouldn't it be leading us into a trap? That's a nasty idea. Still, a robin, they're good birds in all the stories I've read. I'm sure a robin wouldn't be on the wrong side. If it comes to that, which is the right side? How do we know that the fawns are in the right and the queen, yes, I know we've been told she's a witch, is in the wrong? We don't really know anything about either. The fawn saved Lucy. He said he did, but how do we know? And there's another thing too. Has anyone the least idea of the way home from here? Great Scott, said Peter. I hadn't thought of that. And no chance of dinner either, said Edmund. And that was the end of chapters 5 and 6. So if you are new to my channel and you have not heard the first book and you haven't heard the other chapters of this book, the first book is in a playlist called The Magician's Nephew. And I highly suggest you listen to that because that's the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia. And the second book is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And this will be in that playlist as well once it uploads. So if you haven't heard these stories, I recommend that you go and listen from the beginning until now because they're delightful. And I'm just going to take a peek in the chat and see what's happening. I saw you guys chatting. I was trying not to read it because it's distracting, and I try to just keep the story to the story. So Michelle L, Sufanelli, Zulu 1, hello, hello, hello. I know I said hello, but I'm gonna say hello again. This show is getting huge. Oh yeah, I think I peaked at 5 live viewers, so I'm just about to go viral. Jester Bear, you do reading live streams. It's amazing. I've always thought about doing this. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. I love to read, and I really like to read stories to people, and there's so much hate on the internet that I like to give people a place to be. You can come to my channel and watch stuff that doesn't hate you and hear stories that are probably, getting forgotten. A lot of people have not heard the Chronicles of Narnia. They're a bit of an older story, and they really just stand the test of time. Their story is still very, very much relevant, and yeah, I really enjoy it a lot. ABCs, hey, I'm new here. Thanks for being here. I'm not on the watch page on YouTube, or else I would hand out some wrenches, but just don't be rude in my chat and you won't get banned. So there you go. No wasps allowed. I'm just reading the chat real quick. Michelle L, yeah, 100%. There was those really big buildings. They all have antennas on top of them, and their fireplaces are not capable of heating buildings that large. And so I think definitely some kind of electric power in those. I'm going to try not to chat too much. I try to keep it to just story time, but yeah. So yeah, the professor is Dudley. So he knows that Narnia exists. And the tree that fell down in the first book, Dudley went to Narnia, got the apple, he planted the apple core, and it grew into a tree, and the tree fell down, and then they made the wardrobe out of it. And so, yeah. Wonky internet is the worst. I wish I had a door in my house to anywhere at this point. Yeah, no kidding. Anytime I've read a magic book, I'm like, can I be there, please? I'm currently reading a series right now. It's by Piers Anthony, and it's the Xanth series, which is spelled Xanth, and it's about a magic land that, depending on the right time, you can access it through Florida, the Florida Keys, and I want to go there really bad because pies grow on trees as well as clothes, and there's dragons and princesses and magic and centaurs and mermaids and other magic worlds. Like, oh, it's just so much fun. The Ways of the Lonely Ones is on my to read aloud list. Yeah, I'm going to read through this series. There's 7 books in the Chronicles of Narnia. And then after that, I'm going to read the Lord of the Rings series, which I have never read those at all. So I am very much looking forward to that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. I will not be reading the Elven language because I don't know how in any way. So, yeah. No gaslighting allowed in my channel. You'll get banned. I don't know who you're gaslighting. Maybe you're talking about the fireplaces. Just scrolling through. Yes, Flattoberfest was a great time. And yes, Tumnus is Tumnus. Tumnus, yeah. Just scrolling. I've never looked at Crater Earth one single time, or Hollow Earth. I personally am a tree earther. I think that we live on a giant tree of life. So go ahead and do whatever you want with that information. I don't know how to prove it in any way, but that's what I think we live on. So why not? I mean, we definitely don't live on a open system, pressurized, water ball spinning rocket in the vast endlessness of space. We definitely don't live on that. So whatever, yeah, you speak elf, don't lie. No, I speak awkward. I speak English and broken English. Okay, well, I reached the end of the chat. So, hey, don't give your info to 23andMe. Don't do that. No. But anyway, thank you all for being here. And if you are bored and want to set your money on fire on dumb stuff, you can donate it to me instead. And it's, let's see if I can get it this way. Camera angles are hard. Right there, down there at the bottom, paypal.me/finding Dottie, and Dottie is spelled Dottie, like my channel. So if you have extra money and you feel like sending it my way, feel free to do that. If you don't, then don't. That's fine too. And if you want to send me a handwritten letter or some seeds or something cool that you made, you can do that at P.O. Box 1598 Shelton, Washington, 98584. And I might just read your letter on a stream one of these times. So that would be really fun. I like handwritten letters.
Don't forget to turn off your doodah.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you for not scaring me.
Yeah, that's why I tried to
Oh, that's awesome.
Unlike some people we know.
Yeah. That's awesome. That was my mom. She reminded me to turn off my grow lights, and she did not scare me to death like my granny did on my very first live stream. So that was fun. But I just set up my greenhouse and my grow lights, and I'm very excited to get my seeds started for tomorrow. So, or get them started tomorrow for the springtime. Don't leave that doodah on. Yeah, exactly. The doodah might burn down the place. You just never know. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to get off of here because I'll just, oh, what am I growing? What am I not growing is really the question. I am going to be starting some cold weather crops like beets and kale and broccoli, cauliflower, Carrots will direct sow those. Um, so yeah, I'm going to start the cold weather items, and those can go out. Those will go out in probably a couple weeks because they are frost hardy. So yeah, it'll be okay if they are out in the cold. But then I'm also starting a ton of tomatoes and peppers. Very excited for both of those. I don't think that there is anything I am more excited to grow than a, a tomato. Like I am like so unbelievably excited to grow my own tomato. So I'm going to be starting a couple varieties of like the big slicer tomatoes and also a couple varieties of like little cherry tomato kind of things, the small ones. So yeah, I'm going to be starting those, and then I'm going to start an assortment of flowers too, because like marigolds are really good companion plants for tomatoes. They help keep the bugs away, whatnot. And so yeah, I'm going to be starting a bunch of flowers and a bunch of veggies, and I'm just so excited. I have this greenhouse that is like, the shelves go up to probably, trying to think, the whole thing is like just taller than me, and I'm 5'3", so the tallest shelf is probably about 4 feet, maybe 4.5 feet tall, and I have a grow light on each section of the shelves, so I have 4 shelves to put stuff on. And yeah, I'm going to be starting a ton of stuff. I'm going to start extras as well because some things may die, or I will be sharing it with friends and people in my community. So I am very excited for that. Yeah, the last 2 years I've wanted a garden very, very badly. The first year I got my garden plot I got like a community garden plot in August, and I harvested some radish and some carrots, but it was pretty much too late for anything else. And then last year I was moving a bunch. So I just like moving here, moving there. And so I just like missed the whole season of being able to grow stuff. I did grow a couple things in my outdoor garden bed, but not nearly enough. So this year I'm going to be growing a lot of stuff, and I have a birthday wish list. I'm trying to think when I want to do that stream because my birthday is coming up on March 1st, and maybe I'll do that. I'll do that Sunday. Yeah, this coming Sunday after I get home from dropping my son off, I'll do a stream on my birthday wish list. And if you are bored and feel like sending me something on my birthday wish list, you can do that. And yeah, if you don't want to, that's fine too. Or you can just tune in and be in the live chat. That's always fun too. So whatever you want, it's fine. Everything is fine. Everything is awesome. Kirk Wilson, super Pisces. Yeah, 100%. I am dead in the middle of the cusp of Pisces. Like I am smack dab in the middle of that between Aquarius, which we're in right now, and Aries, which is after. Yes, I am 100% in the middle of Pisces, and I am super Pisces through and through. We love hard and we hate hard just as much. So don't get on my bad side. But anyway, I am going to get out of here. Thank you all for being here. And again, if you have not heard the first book, that's in the playlist, The Magician's Nephew. And if you want to catch up on these chapters, that is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So Thanks for being here. I'm going to get out of here. I don't ever know how to end these, and I just get awkward and just start saying random stuff to fill the time. Anywho, I'm going to go. Much love. Thanks for being here. Oh, wait. I'm having a meetup on March 20th. It's a spring equinox meetup, March 20th, 2 p.m., Neyland, Washington, Neyland Park in Shelton, Washington. So, if you're on the West Coast and you want to come to a meetup, please do. Mark Sargent will be there. Ceiling Fan Man will be there. The Great Baldini will be there. And Nathan Thompson and Austin Whitsitt gets it. They are going to try and stop on part of their West Clown World tour. So they're going to try and stop for the meetup as well. So there's going to be a lot of bears there. There's going to be a lot of flat earthy people there. And it's going to be a really good time. So come on out to my meetup. Spring Equinox meetup, March 20th, 2 p.m., Neyland, Washington. God, why do I keep saying that? Neyland Park, Shelton, Washington. Okay? Anyway, I think that's the last thing on my evil agenda. Much love. See y'all on the flat side. And thanks for tuning in once again. Bye.